Pranam Partho. Welcome to our next conversation on Gita. Partho, one of the things we've read in Gita is that one is not the doer, not the karta. There are gunas of Prakriti in some sense that make one does whatever the being does. So, gunas is a very peculiar word, not easy to translate in English, as we had discussed earlier. Would love for you to try and explain what are the gunas of Prakriti that make us do what we do.
The word guna itself is very difficult to translate into English. There are several words you have: quality, attribute. But one of the interesting, I wouldn't call it translations, renderings of gunas in English was strands. If you can think of Prakriti, which is again roughly translated into English would be nature, but this is much more than nature. Actually, we do have a better word in English for Prakriti, that which is manifest. So anything which is manifest is Prakriti. And now think of Prakriti to manifest itself. It needs to in order to manifest itself, it projects. Let's use the word projects. These strands, almost like strands that constitute a fabric. So these are strands that constitute manifestation, Prakriti. And these strands are what one would regard as gunas in Sanskrit. So three are the gunas that we talk of. The first is Sattva gun, from the word Sattva, which again is a very difficult word to render into English. But Sattva, the words associated or the sense associated with Sattva would be lightness, lucidity, transparence, balance, clarity, illumination, calm, all that. If you put together, you have Sattva. So the strand of Sattva, the Sattva guna. And then you have the Rajoguna from the word Rajas, which conveys dynamism, movement, kinesis. So the kinetic force that binds this fabric of Prakriti, of manifestation, that's Rajogun. So without the Rajogun, you wouldn't have anything that would be moving. To animate something, to move something, to make anything dynamic from its resting state, to move anything from its resting state, you would need the push of Rajogun. That's the strand of Rajas. And then you have the Tamogun from the word Tamas, the strand of Tamas. Again, Tamas in English would convey rest, would convey staticity, even immobility, in a slightly negative sense, lethargy, indolence, darkness, the darkness of ignorance, of unconsciousness. So all that would be attributes of tamas. But on a positive side, the attributes of tamas would be your ability to rest. Because if there was only the rajogun, the kinesis, we would burn ourselves out in no time. So you do need the balance of dynamism and rest, kinesis and stasis. So Tamas and Rajas. And Sattva, of course, is the one that balances everything out. That's the strand of equilibrium, perfect balance. So these are the three strands that make up Prakriti, this entire manifest cosmos. And the ideal state, of course, is when the three gunas, or the three attributes, the three forces of Prakriti are in perfect balance, which is hardly ever the case, really, but the ideal is which in that perfect balance. Many say that if the three gunas are in perfect balance, then actually nothing happens. So for any kind of an action or movement in manifestation, you need to have a certain disequilibrium. So what we know as our life in the universe, a whole range of permutations and combinations of the three gunas of Prakriti. Of course, we'll need more time, of course, to go into the details, but I think you're not asking for details right now.
Not yet. Maybe at some point. I think this even deserves a whiteboard exercise.
Yeah,
at some stage.
It does deserve a whiteboard exercise.
Let this be an intro to the gunas for now.
Yeah, as an introduction, I think that should suffice.
Yeah. So, thanks. Great introduction. Clarifies a lot.
So to answer your question really, because you asked about the gunas in the context of non-doership.
Yes.
And because that's what the Gita says, that we are not really doers.
Doer. Yeah.
The sense of doership, what the Gita calls karta bhav, is itself an illusion. So imagine the three strands of nature, these three gunas of nature, like three strands or strings holding a puppet. And the puppet really is not moving by itself. It is moved by these three strings, strands, the three gunas of nature. So whatever movement you see, within or without, psychologically or physically, is actually the movements of Prakriti, the gunas of Prakriti. So the strings are moving and the puppet seems to be moving. But the puppet doesn't know this unless it's a very self-conscious puppet. It doesn't know that it's being moved. So it truly believes that it is moving itself. It's self-animated. It has self-will. And by willing its movements, it is moving. So that's the sense of doer, that I am doing it. So I believe I'm the doer. I believe I'm the thinker, the initiator of actions. I'm the one who's attaining things. I'm the one who's willing, acting upon the environment, all that. So that's the sense of doership. But if this puppet were to become conscious of itself and of the universe and the forces that move it, it would immediately know that there is no doership. It's just being moved by the forces of nature. So that is the context in which we talk of the gunas of Prakriti and karta bhav.
Let's take this to one more level of detail. Let's maybe take Gita as an example, in which Sri Krishna once talks to Duryodhana also and says that, do you really want to fight? And he says, this is my being. I have to fight. This is what I feel. So some guna of these three gunas in some combination are making him feel that, and that's what he wants to do. Could you try and elaborate what potential combination of the gunas made him feel that, made him do that, or sort of asuric tendencies in some sense, if that's a word we can use here.
Sort of a psychological analysis of the gunas at work.
Yeah, so I want to bring gunas into work.
Well,
later.
obviously, one can sense the rajas and the tamas. It's a combination of rajogun and tamogun. Why tamogun? Because what is motivating action in Duryodhana is not the higher qualities of human nature, not the higher qualities of prakriti, like generosity, compassion, kindness, fair play, justice. What we in Sanskrit, in the one word would be dharma for all this. So it is not dharma, obviously, that's motivating Duryodhana, because somewhere inside him, Duryodhana knows that what he is demanding of the Pandavas is actually not right. Of course, the Kauravas, led by Duryodhana, they have their own kingdom. They have their own state. And what they're really fighting for are 5 small villages that rightfully belong to the Pandavas, but they don't want to give away even that. So there you can see the forces of insecurity, perhaps, jealousy, possessiveness.
That comes in tamas?
Yes, so those are tamoguna, products of tamoguna. What in English we would call the lower tendencies of human nature. So inability to share, the opposite of generosity.
To dominate, just
the
crush.
need to dominate.
Yeah.
The need to control and dominate. That's rajoguna and tamoguna together. So you see a very rich play actually of tamoguna and rajoguna behind Duryodhana, if you take the example of Duryodhana.
And if we were to, for a second, shift the focus to Arjuna, his behavior is probably more sattvic, that he just
Arjuna
wants.
would of course also be rajasic, really, predominantly rajasic.
But rajasic was introduced by Sri Krishna that, okay, you have to act. You cannot not act.
Yeah, but
the initial tendency was...
Yeah, but in a context.
In the context, yes.
But if you just take Arjuna away from the context of the war, Arjuna as a Kshatriya, Arjuna as a prince, as a Kshatriya, then his dharma would be resting on rajas.
Yeah.
But of course, tempered by sattva, so that an Arjuna wouldn't become a Duryodhana. See, the Duryodhana is also rajogun, so is Arjuna, and both are Kshatriyas. And Kshatriyas are known for their rajas, their rajasic tendencies. But in the case of Duryodhana, it's rajas with a lot of tamas. With Arjuna, it's rajas touched and influenced by sattva, which is light, balance, an equilibrium, higher qualities and higher attributes of human nature, generosity, true heroism, heroism tinged with idealism, idealistic heroism as we would call it. So, but both of them are dominantly rajasic individuals because their dharma is rajasic. Yudhishthira, if you go to Yudhishthira, for instance, then you're moving more towards the sattva.
Yeah.
So in Yudhishthira, we see a lot of sattva with the rajas, just as in Arjuna, of course, but in Yudhishthira, the sattva is more, it dominates more than it does in Arjuna's case. So in the context of the Gita's war, where you need a man of action on the battlefield and focused and ruthless action, really, Arjuna is really more effective than Yudhishthira, because Yudhishthira is at somewhat of a disadvantage because of the preponderance of Sattva. And somewhere you can see that the Sattva weighs on the Rajas. Whereas in Duryodhana's case, the Tamas weighs on the Rajas. And Arjuna has more of a balance. You know? He's more of a Rajasic individual, balanced by his Sattva gun. And of course the Tamogun in its positive nature, in its positive spin. So yes, in a way it's an interesting exercise to analyze characters and events in the light of the three gunas.
Yeah, and sure, definitely. And if the highly evolved yogis are able to see the three gunas at play within themselves and within others also.
Well, you don't need to be particularly highly evolved. I mean, any person who is firmly situated, more or less firmly situated in the observation mode, in the Sakshi Bhav, can see the gunas at work. You just need a bit of a detachment from what you call your own ego. If you're not too taken up by this concept of I am the one moving the mind and the body, and I'm the doer, if you're not too caught up in that fanciful notion of the self, of the ego, and then you will see these gunas at play, and not just in yourself but in everyone. And instead of reacting to other people, you can very clearly see, it's the tamogun right now which is dominating this individual. So why react to Prakriti's tamogun? So tamogun, the movement of tamogun will pass. And it gives you some sort of a psychological distance from all action, all events. You react less if you could see everything as a play of the gunas. And this play of the gunas is really universal. It's not it works through individuals, but it's universal. The play is universal.
And if we have to see how it plays today in today's world, let's fast forward the clock to today's world. Say I had a very long day, busy working day. In the evening I come home, I'm really tired, very thirsty, and I think I deserve a beer. I open a bottle of beer. Now that is, what guna would that be attributing or inciting?
Again, I would see Rajas and Tamas.
Rajas and Tamas. And if I were to not stop there and have, let's say, 10 beers over the next few hours,
then you're moving more into Tamas.
More Tamas and more dark side of the Tamas, where it's more a greed now.
If you have a lot of beer, then obviously you will not be very conscious of for a while, unless you've sort of mastered drinks. But even if you remain conscious, your body is going to suffer anyway.
Yeah.
So then you're moving definitely towards the tamasic end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And the way we work normally in today's world is far more rajasic, tamasic than sattvic, rajasic. I mean, obviously all action is rajasic. If you're a businessman, for instance, you will not be able to move in business or move the forces of business or be a leader of people without rajas. You need a lot of rajas for that. A leader, above all, needs a lot of rajas. But the more the rajas is influenced by sattva, the better the leader. So the way most of us work today, and this is not a judgment on people, I mean, just pure observation. I see a lot more of rajasic, tamasic combination, because that which motivates us is not very often sattvic, it's tamasic. And of course rajasic, the need to dominate, to control, the need for power, fame,
Money,
more than what anyone would need. All these are very strong rajasic needs with the backing of the tamas. And tamas would be greed. Greed is tamas. So, because it comes from insecurity, greed is, I think, the oldest tendency of human nature. Because I'm sure when we were still savages in the jungles, we needed to hoard like many animals too. It's because we did not know whether we were going to be able to get our food for the next day. You see, we started off as hunter-gatherers, and gathering is the beginning of hoarding. And if you were completely secure that there's ample food, then you wouldn't need to hoard anything. So, these things, you can see that how nature itself evolves through its gunas. Until you come to the other end of the spectrum, where the human being, the same human being who's greedy, who's insecure, anxious, apprehensive, fearful, therefore greedy and pushy and dominating and needing to control, and all the control freaks in the world, that same human being at another end, where he or she moves towards the sattvic end of the spectrum, without of course giving up the rajasic, becomes a truly enlightened leader, becomes a truly enlightened being who is still in action, because the rajas is there, but this rajas is purified. It's purified by deep and strong influence of sattva. So there is generosity instead of the need to preserve, instead of greed. There is generosity, there is compassion. Instead of the need to dominate and control, there's compassion and understanding. And all the true virtues of individual nature and of human civilization is born out of sattva, which enlightens the rajas. And of course also enlightens the tamas.
Just an example came to mind, very relevant in today's world. A dear friend of mine is starting a hospital which will be operated by Apollo, the big brand in India. And Apollo runs hundreds of hospitals, I believe, or lots of them. And the chairman of Apollo was saying to my friend that you have to always think about saving lives, curing patients, more the better, faster the better, more efficiently the better, and then the money would follow. But don't think about making the money first, because then you would not be focused on saving lives, you'll be just focused on, and I'm just seeing that how sattvic thought that is, which brings, with rajasic of course, but versus the tamasic, in which some hospitals would just operate patients because it makes them more money rather than just curing them and sending them back home and treating the next one.
Right.
So the same play, as you said, it's the world generally, unfortunately, seems to be more in rajasic and tamasic combination.
What you say about your friend, I find very rare.
Yeah.
Hospitals, including the one you're mentioning, are well known for their scams.
Yeah.
They're not fair at all, but I'm happy to hear what you're saying, and I hope this becomes the ruling ideal for all medical and for all healthcare, really.
Yeah.
But you're right.
There's another example in similar way, today's world, a group called Arvind Eye Care. Arvind Eye Care is a for-profit business, but deep-rooted DNA is that they need to give eyesight and dignity to people who can't afford it, to the underprivileged people, to less.
So that's a sattvic ideal.
That's a sattvic ideal.
Informing.
Very conscious. But while doing it, now, because they are doing it so cheaply or close to free, they have to innovate so much to bring the cost down that their innovation becomes patentable and licensable later, where they make money. So
which is a good thing.
Which is a brilliant thing, right? So point I guess I'm trying to make is that, again, rajasic everyone has to be, we are here for a reason, but if we were to more lean towards sattvic, the right balance of tamasic outcomes will come, the forces, the power, the money, and what we need will get.
Yeah, the right balance in business, in politics, in social dynamics, and yes.
They could all become fairly conscious and still make money. It's not that you can have consciousness, but then don't think about the business. That's the wrong notion some people have.
Yeah, and this is a notion is people feel that just the fact of making money is only rajasic. You can also have a lot of sattva and rajas together and still make money in the dharmic way. So dharma itself, doing anything in the dharmic way, making money, running a business, running a country, or an organization, whatever you do with a certain sense of sincerity, truthfulness, compassion and idealism, the dharmic way, would be sattvic by itself. And sattvic or sattva gun, illuminating, enlightening the rajagun, and also influencing the tamogun. I mean, we do need the tamogun too. I mean, many people feel that tamas is something to be eliminated. Of course not. And you need tamas to bring about that perfect balance of being. As I said, if you have action, you also need rest. I'm saying, if you're awake, you need to sleep too. But if you're sleeping all the time, that's not good. If you're awake and active all the time, that too is not good. If you're too much into sattva, too much of idealism, that too is not good, because too much of idealism never does any good to anyone. So you see, the extremes never work. The extreme of sattva, the extreme of tamas, or the extreme of rajas, that's why you always want, we need a balance. We want a balance. So the three gunas have to work together in harmony. They have to work in harmony and balance. And that's the understanding one takes away from the Gita.
And one last question I have on this is, there are, at times we eat some food or consume some products and they say that this food at this time, eating late at night, is more tamasic than sattvic, or the food itself is more tamasic than sattvic. How would you describe this? Is it really the consciousness with which you consume something that makes something tamasic or sattvic, or is it that the food itself could be...
It's again not so easy. I mean, there's no black and white here.
Yes.
It's very nuanced. Yes, of course. I mean, at the deepest level, the consciousness with which you eat makes your food sattvic or rajasic or tamasic. If you eat with a lot of greed, then it's tamasic. Whatever food you may be eating, if you eat it greedily, it becomes tamasic. Same way, whatever food you may be eating, if you eat it with just the right consciousness, the right amount, without any greed, without any need to, hoard, with you're ready to share, you eat quietly and consciously. You eat in a spirit of consecration, a spirit of yagna, as use the Gita's language. Then whatever you eat becomes sattvic. At one level, yes. On another level, the food itself. I mean, in the yoga, we believe that stale food that has lost its life force, is tamasic, no matter what food it is. You can take the so-called most sattvic food and keep it and become stale. It loses its prana, its pranic quality, and it becomes tamasic. So that's another very important consideration. Then a lot of factors go into it. How and where you cook, for instance. Who cooks, for instance? A very tamasic individual cooking will make the food tamasic. And a highly sensitive being will know that. It will react in his or her system. And a highly sattvic being making food will make the food sattvic just with the fact that it's made by such a being. So again, who makes the food, where the food is prepared, makes a difference. So it's not so easy. I mean, I find most people who practice these things, the practicing Hindus, have made it very
Mechanical?
Mechanical, yes. Mechanical, sometimes ritual. It's become ritualistic, mechanical, out of habit or superstition.
Mm-hmm.
So that's unfortunate. Because one has to be conscious of everything behind the play. So there's a lot goes behind food and how food is consumed. So we say that it's not just the person who's eating the food. The food also eats you. The eater is the eaten. So there's a lot behind it that needs to be understood.
So Partho, one more question I have that comes to me is that, let's say in today's life, an average working human being gets 24 hours a day. The working hours in an office or in whatever one is doing tends to be around 8 hours. Then 8 hours maybe for personal life, eating, doing things, and then 8 hours sleep. This is a balance of life that we hear about, believe about, live. But many people end up like overworking a lot more due to work pressure, due to their own interest, because it's a startup, they want to make it happen. Some people would slog and work, let's say, 100 hours a week compared to 40 hours, which should be standard. And then on the other extreme, you might have countries like France where they would go on strike if they have to work more than 25 hours a week or something like, or 28 hours a week. So how should one balance this out in light of these gunas at play? What are the challenges you see in today's world when these gunas touch any extreme of tamasic or?
That's an interesting and a very practical question. One of the widespread habits that I see today, is not knowing where to stop. When you're working, earning money, doing things, that one just goes on and on. You don't know where to stop. And this is very interesting in the light of the Gita and the Indian yogic systems, where you actually see Rajogun, the Rajas, when taken to an extreme, becomes tamasic. And that's workaholism, for instance. Workaholism is on the tamasic end of things. So you can't give yourself a break. You're consumed by not the work, but by the ambition behind the work. That which is driving you furiously all the time. So you don't take an inner break, which is, if you go to the Indian yogic context and to the Bhagavad Gita, it's so very important to be able to step back from action every once in a while and repose in your inner quietude. To step back from rajas and step back from the play of rajas and repose, which is tamas, but reposing is also sattva. There's this sleep of unconsciousness, tamasic, and then there's this sleep which refreshes, rejuvenates, almost spiritually renews, which is sattvic. So I find most people fall into this tamasic kind of sleep, a sleep of complete unconsciousness, and they don't wake up too fresh. And also so many people I hear these days complaining of lack of sleep. It's a big thing. Sleep deprivation is a big thing in today's world, and hardly anyone can really sleep the way the yoga asks us to sleep. In yoga we talk of deep restful repose, which is almost an inner renewal. So then you don't even need so many hours to sleep. You wake up absolutely fresh and ready for action again. But this is what we don't have. So the Gita talks about action and inaction, balance of action and inaction, action in inaction, inaction in action. So you're not always, it's that doership is not there. You know the gunas are acting through you, the gunas are acting through you, and behind the gunas there's a divine force and divine inspiration working through you. At a higher level, a divine will acting through you. So the ability to see all that, the ability to stand apart from the action and observe action itself, that gives you the sattvic distance and actually brings light into the rajas and into the tamas. So you move from habitual activity and habitual furious action, driven action, let's say, driven action, to a more meditative action. So in the context of the Gita, for instance, we don't talk of action and meditation as two separate things that now you meditate and then you get back into action. We talk about meditative action, where meditation or meditativeness, actually more of meditativeness, is the very quality of your action. So you can imagine how different that action would be. So that would be sattvic, rajasic action. So I think that's something that we really need to go back to in our modern times, and because we are going mad. So many things around us, so many distractions, and this constant need for action and this constant fear of missing out if one is not all the time active. So, and then you need to take a break, a vacation, which is also again a lot of activity, you know. So when one reaches a true inner repose and meditative action, you don't need to take breaks really. You attain that inner equilibrium of the forces of the gunas.
And a couple of other factors I want to add into this. One is also the kind of work people do.
Yes.
So most of the times it's not aligned with their true dharma or true being. They're not doing something where they could ever be meditative action. They're always doing something just to pay the bills, what pays most money, and that's a tamasic work in the first place. And then you overdo it, surely you're burning yourself out, or you're gonna...
So this whole money thing has become tamasic.
Correct.
Our need for money, the way we earn money, the way we use money, it's all very tamasic, rajasic, tamasic.
Yeah, and so in some cases, I mean, I see some people who do exceptional work, whether they're artists, they're sports people, they're business people, but you find so much balance in them that you actually see with meditative action where they don't need a break because they're loving what they're doing. And they're so at peace, so comfortable that they, I mean, surely they need to sleep 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, whatever their body demands, but they are working for the rest of the time. They don't need a break. They are happy doing the work, and their work is a break is a work, as you said. So that balance has to be brought, and that only one can feel from inside. It can never be measured with how much money you are making. It can never be measured with how many things.
You don't have that frenetic pace. There's a certain quietude in your action, and that doesn't mean that you can't be busy throughout the day. You can be busy throughout the day without burning yourself out. Without your work becoming a distraction. That's the next level of work itself.
And one last point I want to mention is that what makes things more tamasic in the day-to-day life of today's world is the technology, the social media, where people have the tendency to look at a message every second, post something every second, seeking attention, seeking comparisons, seeking validation, seeking gratifications. That's an endless process with which you go to sleep, with which you wake up. Having your phone in the same room around your bed is where the problem starts.
It's a constant distraction.
Then you're not sleeping well, you're not really recovering, and you wake up tired. Right?
And that's the tamasic end of our existence. That's rajas, but with a lot of tamas.
Yeah.
So you get absorbed. you lose consciousness,
Yeah.
or you lose self-awareness. So you're so much into the devices. So that's, of course, also tamasic.
Yeah.
Any kind of mindless absorption is tamasic.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
any kind of mindful wakefulness, that's sattvic. And the balance is through the rajas. So these are ways in which we bring our individual beings and our societies into equilibrium. And that's a very important takeaway from the Bhagavad Gita.
Sure. That's very interesting. I hope our viewers find some inspiration in that conversation. And it's a
And
very
samatha, the Gita has this beautiful word samatha and samabhav. Samabhav and samatha also means this equilibrium,
yeah.
this balance of forces.
Sure. With that balance, Partho, I think we should end the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
For
Thank
now.
you so much.